Cadence, should I start just briefly? Okay.
Let's do it.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first meeting. My name is Angie Brewer, and I am the project manager from DLCD on this work. And I am going to start by turning it over to our director, Brenda Bateman, to introduce this and welcome you all. And then you'll hear me talk again in a few moments.
Thank you, Angie. Good morning, everybody. Still trying to find where all the buttons are. Good morning. My name is Brenda Bateman. I'm the director of the Department of Land Conservation and Development. And I know we'll do a litany of introductions here in a few moments, but I just wanted to take a few minutes to start by thanking our partners with us in this work. We have a couple of other agencies with us today, Department of Early Learning and Care and Department of Consumer Business Services, including the Building Codes Division, as well as Eco Northwest for our facilitation this morning. And I just wanted to take a few moments to thank all of you for taking the time out. I know it's really important and really difficult to carve time out of your busy days for work like this, but I know you're all aware how important this is and how important the outcomes of your time together will ultimately be. For me personally, when I was a young working mom, having access to childcare that was affordable and safe and nearby made all the difference in the health and the mental health and the economic well-being of my family. Being able to properly site childcare facilities so that they're accessible to folks is it's just such valuable work. And I wanted to thank you for your time and bringing your expertise into this space. Please let me know if there's anything that I can do personally to help you in your work as you're at this over the next many weeks. And welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. I'll plan to join you for a few minutes today, and I'm looking forward to the introductions and seeing everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bateman. I appreciate it. Appreciate you making time. Like I said, I'm Angie Brewer. I'm the project manager for this. My regular job for DLCD is a Central Oregon regional representative position. I do want to acknowledge briefly that Gordon Howard, our community services division manager, is in the Zoom room with us. And I don't know if Gordon, do you want to say anything or introduce yourself before we send it around to the rest of the team?
No, I don't. Gordon Howard, Community Services Division Manager. I'm just looking forward to this discussion and putting together some good recommendations for the legislature as they've asked us to do to bring this forward to them at their next session to try to, in 2025, to try to make the siting of childcare facilities easier in the state for all of our families, our state's families and children.
Thank you. And now I'm going to turn over to Kelly and Melissa, the other members of our internal DLCD team on this. Kelly?
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks for coming. You've heard from me by email and some of you by phone, so it's great to finally see here and be here for the first meeting. I'm a regional representative with DLCD in the Portland metro area, so Clackamas and Multnomah counties.
Morning, everyone. I am Melissa Ahrens. I am in my normal role at DLCD, the Mid-Willamette Valley Regional Representative, but I've been assisting the team under Angie's amazing leadership in kind of helping out with the website and helping the consultant team as well. But I'm here as a resource throughout the project, like the rest of the DLCD team and the consultant team, and we're just really excited to have you here and excited about this important work and discussions to come. So thank you.
Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge there's one other member from DLCD here, but Patrick, if it's okay if we wait until we start doing introductions with the rest of the team since you've transitioned to a formal team member, that'd be awesome. Thank you. Okay, Cadence, I think I'm ready to kick it over to the ECHO team. Appreciate the time here.
Thanks, Angie. Hello, everybody. I'm Cadence Petros. I'm a project director at Eco Northwest. We're a research policy firm headquartered in Portland, which is where I'm zooming in from this morning. And so I think we'll take a minute to introduce the consultant team, and then we'll introduce all of you and have you answer a couple questions as you get to know each other for this work group. So, like I said, I'm Cadence. I've been working in local government for about 25 years in housing, urban renewal, economic development, and I've been at the firm at Echo Northwest for about 2 years, helping clients answer difficult questions. So I will turn it over to Mackenzie.
Thanks, Cadence. I'm Mackenzie Visser. I'm an associate at Echo. I have also worked at Echo for around 2 years, and in general, I work on a wide range of land use and social and education policy projects, including several prior childcare projects. So I know this is really important work, and I'm excited to get started with all of you. And I will hand it over to Leanne, our project manager.
Hi everyone, I'm Leanne Ryan. I'm a project manager at Echo Northwest. I've also been with the company around a little over 2 years now. I primarily work in housing, but I've started kind of making this move into the childcare space, which has been really interesting and exciting. So I'm really looking forward to this work. And I also want to let our other consultant, Scott Edwards Architecture, introduce themselves. Peter, I'll let you go.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Grimm, principal with Scott Edwards Architecture, and we are really serving as an advisory in an advisory capacity to the Echo team. Just a quick background: we've been involved with the design, permitting, and construction of actually over 30 childcare projects in Oregon over the last 20 years. So we're really here as a resource for folks with regard to questions related to planning, zoning, and building code, things of that nature. So great to be here. Thank you. Let's see, Margaret?
Yeah, I'm Margaret Wilson. I'm a principal at Scott Edwards Architecture, also joining the team to be that same resource as Peter. So glad to be here. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, folks. So now it's your turn, work group friends, to introduce yourselves. And as you do so, I'm gonna pick the first person. So sorry for the one that I volunteer first. But the good news is you get to pick the next person, and we'll go around. And then when it starts to get towards the end and we're not sure who's gone before, if you could raise your hand when you're, I haven't spoken up yet, and then we can sort of let folks know who they can call on next. As you introduce yourself, we'd like you to offer your name, what city you're Zooming in from, your role or your organization, and why are you here today? Why did you opt in to participate in this project? We're really grateful you did, and we'd like to understand sort of your motivation for participating this morning. Okay, so Mandy Johnson, you're up.
Hi, I'm Mandy Johnson. I live out in Pleasant Hill. My program is Silly Billies Together, and we have 3 programs: a certified family, a little center, and a recorded school age program that operates out of a church. I've been working with children for 20 years now, and I am here because in my rural community, trying to navigate land use barriers has popped up a lot and been a struggle. So I'm hoping to find answers and try to help others through this process. And I will pick, let's see, Donna Crawford next.
Hi, I'm Dawn Crawford, and I work for, well, I'm out of Warrington today, Warrington, Oregon. I work for Community Action Team as the Associate Director for our children's programs, and we have Head Start, Early Head Start, and Healthy Families in a tri-county area, Columbia, Clatsop, and Tillamook counties. Why I'm here is because I'm really invested in our communities and the lack of childcare resources for our families and our community. And I sit in on localized county childcare initiatives and different things that are happening. So this just felt like a really good fit to be able to see what we can do at the state level to support us at the community level. And what was I've been in the field of Head Start and early childhood education for 33 years. So it's been my career, my passion, and I feel this is where I will be until I retire. I will pick, let me see, I gotta scroll through to find a name here. How about Whitney O'Connell?
Hi, everyone. My name is Whitney O'Connell, and I'm with the Department of Early Learning and Care, DELC. I'm the Early Learning and Business Support Coordinator, and specifically focused on the child care infrastructure funds with the House Bill HB 3005. And I'm joining this work group to gain a better understanding of landscape barriers, as we heard from one child care provider. And we'll say if any of you want to reach out and kind of help me understand a little bit more about the zoning and permitting processes, if you've specifically worked with early childhood facilities, you can send me a message and I'd love to connect. And I will pass it off to the Mackenzie Visser.
I am actually with the project team, so I will pass it on again to Leigh McIlving.
I had a feeling
That's
that
right.
was me. I'm Lee McIlvain. I actually work at DLCD with colleagues here. I'm the state economic development specialist, and that means that I primarily work on employment lands planning. Um, my role is based in Salem, but I live in North Portland, and I'm participating in this project not on the project management side, but in the work group side, just because um, I'm just incredibly passionate about this issue. I have a kindergartner this year, but navigating him through the childcare system was very challenging, and kind of led me to be an advocate for it. And I was really surprised to learn, reading some research a couple of years ago, that like the number one impact that you can make on a family's financial stability and well-being is actually taking care of childcare for them. It's not housing. And so I think, we have our work cut out for us in both of those realms, but I'm excited to see DLCD engaging in this and looking forward to working together with everyone.
And Lee, who are you going to pick
Oh,
next?
thank you. Appreciate the reminder. I will pass it on to Annalisa Sheehan Stewart.
Hi, everybody. I'm Annalise Shahan, and I am the chief steward for Local 132 AFSCME. Was asked by my local to represent because I do a lot of work and representation of our childcare providers with their city planning, county people, zoning, all kinds of stuff, housing, insurance, renter's bill, HOAs, all that kind of stuff. Plus, I travel statewide and meet with providers on a regular basis. A lot of these discussions come up. Plus, I get a lot of phone calls about how to start businesses and work with a lot of providers on getting their family childcare business up and running. So I'm sort of a dolly do-it-all. And so I have a lot of information from across the state and that our local's been putting together for the last 8 years. Well, actually more than that, but I've only been here 8 years. And so hoping that I can contribute to the conversation and share information from around the state, especially anecdotal stories about what's going on and what people need to be able to open childcare and some of the barriers for people that haven't been able to get their childcare off the ground because of some snafu related to land use. So, and then somebody who is not with DLCD and is not with, see if I can find someone. Rihanna Ruley There you go. I'll tag you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Brianna Ruley, and I live in rural Douglas County in a small town called Myrtle Creek. I'm a certified family child care provider. I've been doing family child care for 13 years. I'm also opening a child care center, and I've been working on that project for about a year now. And I really wanted to participate. Oh, I'm also a regional director for AFSCME Local 132 Child Care Providers Together. I'm on the board with Annalise. And so I'm participating, one, because our local asked me if I would be interested in participating and sharing my experiences. During COVID, I spent a couple years working with building and zoning in an effort to make some changes and some expansions, and encountered a lot of struggles during that process. And then, as I said, for the last year, I've been working on opening a new childcare center. And so I hope to bring some information about what it's like to be working to expand childcare facilities and the barriers that I've faced, and also to represent family childcare providers from our local who have also been experiencing struggles. And I will pass it to Leslie Barnes.
Good morning, everyone. Leslie Barnes. I use she, her pronouns. I'm in the city of Portland. I'm the director of the preschool and early learning division here in Multnomah County. And in my current role, I'm choosing to participate in this project because we're making a large investment in facilities as we roll out preschool for all in our region. But prior to that, I've almost had every role in early learning and have had my own horror stories as I've navigated facilities and systems not talking to one another and making expensive mistakes. And I've seen those stories play out in many of the child care providers in our region. And I'm hoping that we don't continue to do that. And we support them much better than we have as we collaborate together. And so that's why I'm here. And so I'm going to pass it to Gail Hendrickson.
Hi, thanks, Leslie. My name's Gail Henriksen. I'm in Astoria, and I am the Community Development Director for Clatsop County. And I'm participating for two reasons. One, this is an issue that's really a high priority for our board. So our board has invested $500,000 to support and create new child care spots within the county, and there has been participation from our local hospitals as well. We participated in the code audit that DLCD helped us with a few years ago and adopted some updates to our code already. And then personally, just like many others on our Zoom call today, it's having had a small child and been a single parent at one time, it was very challenging to find childcare that you could get to without a car and not be late and not get charged a penalty, and make sure it was a safe environment. So personally, I'm just very interested in this issue as well. And I will pass it on to Michelle Lewis Barnes.
Hello, everyone. I am Michelle Lewis Barnes. I work for the Department of Early Learning and Care in the Child Care Licensing Division. I'm actually in Portland. I work in the North Portland unit as a senior licenser. And I was volunteered for this project, but it's certainly near and dear to my heart. We run into a lot of the barriers that people have already mentioned. Providers really find it challenging to navigate systems. And I came from early childhood as an owner of certified family child care homes before this role. So I certainly see it from the provider standpoint. And as others have said, there's really not much more important to families with young children than access to childcare in their community. That is all of the things: affordable, safe, quality, etc. So the issue is certainly near and dear to my heart. And I will pass it to Miriam Cecilia from Delk.
Good morning. I'm really excited to be here this morning. There's been a lot of energy around getting us here to this point, really years in the making. So having this combined group is just a really exciting and pivotal moment, I think, for the state to have the agencies and the collaboration we do have here in this room, in this virtual space. So apologies, my name is Miriam Cecilia. I'm with the Department of Early Learning and Care. I'm the Field Operations Director with the Child Care Licensing Division. So my role is essentially to oversee the operations of actual licensure and field licensing in the field. So similar to Michelle, we get to see one-on-one the kind of constraints that providers are posed with when licensing interacts with other kinds of authority or regulatory jurisdiction. And a lot of times it's really, really hard and frustrating to feel that our hands are tied between each other's lanes. So again, so excited to be here and see this collaboration, and so excited for the state around the energy from many different agencies hitting this problem on so many different angles. We have micro centers, we have House bills coming out to look at micro center models. We have House bills coming out to look at outdoor preschool models. We have House bills coming out to look at how affordable housing and co-location of centers. So all of these kind of different conditions and different avenues of creativity that we're now looking at collaboratively are really show that the focus and the importance that the state has decided to put finally on safe early learning. So thanks for being here with us today. I'll go to Fernanda.
Hi, my name is Fernanda Lucas de la Torre. I am originally from Quito, Ecuador. I moved to Oregon almost 2 years and a half ago. I'm a teacher, so I decided to open a nature-based school here in my home. I have a registered home program in the city of Coos Bay. I'm in rural Coos Bay, so I try to represent here what are the challenges here in No Zone, especially being outside of the city and the lack of childcare services that we have around. We are pretty few. As a parent, I face that myself. And I can see what are the challenges for new business owners at childcare centers can be to become certified or go open a bigger business we have been facing. So I'm here to just provide my experience and where we live trying to do that. And I'm very passionate about early years education. I have been being a teacher around the world in other cities. So I have been working in other places, and I can also bring those perspectives to these meetings. Thank you.
And Fernanda, can you choose someone to pass it to?
Yes. Let me see. Virginia Garcia. I know she.
I haven't gone. Good morning. My name is Virginia Garcia. I currently am in Tillamook County, but I do work for Latino Network, which is a nonprofit in Portland. My position is early childhood workforce development manager, so a lot of professional development. I was volunteered to join this group, but I think I'm excited to provide some perspective when I was working for childcare resource and referral with providers, so I have some background there, as well as at Latino Network, we're opening up a preschool, hopefully by the fall. So I think, again, like a new building, so really interested to hear like new information and just really share back to the team. So happy to be here. And I will pick, let's see. Peter Grimm.
Peter's gone already. So I'm going to volunteer, let's see, Chelsea. And then folks who have not gone yet, if you could actually raise your hands, that will bring you to the top of the queue, and we can just go along the list after that. Thank you.
Okay, good morning. I'm Chelsea Schnabel. I am in the city of Coos Bay. I am the community development director for the city. I see childcare as a important, vital part of the community, the economy, and I'm here to lend insight as to planning, zoning, permitting. Would like to see the process more efficient, smoother for both the public and those who work in the city. And I will go to the first person I see with a hand, Dana Hepper.
Good morning. My name's Dana Hepper. I work for the Children's Institute as the Director of Policy and Advocacy. I live in Southeast Portland. I have two reasons for participating in this project. One is that our job is to work on public policy and budget requests that would support early learning and care providers across our state. And so we do that by listening to early learning and care providers first about what they see as important. And we kept hearing about facilities. And so in the summer of 2022, we convened a working group of partners and providers to identify what needed to happen to advance facilities. And one of the outcomes of that work was House Bill 2727. And so we helped draft that bill and move it through the legislature. I'm so happy to be here for implementation. And then two, I'm also a parent. My kids are older now, 10 and 13, but when my 13-year-old was in pre-K, her preschool moved or tried to move and then ended up having to close when they got unexpectedly hit with a $10,000 parking and transportation impact study for trying to convert 3 little parking spots to a playground to meet outdoor square footage requirements. So interested to just learn about how we can improve things for providers, and I'll pass it to Carol.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carol Peterson, and I'm with DELC, the Childcare Licensing Division. I am a childcare initiatives analyst, and I'm based out of Bend right now. My main reason for participating in this project is within my current role, I'm involved with the Micro Center pilot programs as well as outdoor nature-based licensing. So those are key reasons as to why I see the intersection of my role and being involved with this. But prior to me working in the policy unit, I was a senior licensing specialist and covered both the Central Oregon regions as well as Eastern Oregon. So I helped support programs to become licensed. And that typically land use, planning and zoning, and building codes really did raise some barriers for folks to be able to open and expand their businesses. So I hope that I learned something from you all and that we can work together to navigate and make the system a little bit more streamlined for everyone. So I am going to pass it to Shannon.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Shannon Bush. I am from Benton County, Oregon. So, sorry, technically I'm from the East Coast. I work for Benton County, Oregon. I am serving right now as the interim deputy director, and I'm here for a multitude of reasons, much like everyone else has already explained. Personal interest, as somebody who may have children in the near future, something that's near and dear to my heart to have some of these challenges hopefully figured out sooner than later. My professional background is in city planning. So, the sort of land use and zoning perspective and policies behind what makes these types of very critical services to our communities so challenging is near and dear to my heart as well. So kind of coming from multiple angles. Let's see, Danae Gonzalez.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you actually hear me? Is my audio okay? Okay. I'm having technical difficulties today, so I am here, cameras off so that I can hear you and hopefully you can hear me. Good morning. My name is Danae Gonzalez and I am zooming in from Coos Bay. I'm the Business Systems Implementation Specialist with the Department of Early Learning and Care, but I previously spent 7 years as the Program Manager of the Child Care Resource and Referral for Coos and Curry counties. So I've worked directly with childcare providers in trying to open and sustain their businesses and provide training and technical assistance. And I am here to understand how to best support the business acumen of childcare programs around the state and those accessing the childcare infrastructure funds specifically. So I am just here to learn. And just a side note, I did try to start my own program a few years ago, but there were many, many barriers and not enough funding at the time. So I'm really hopeful that now all of these funding opportunities and this work group will really help to build out childcare in our state. Thank you. And I will pass it on to Kate Dennison.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Dennison. I'm the Government Affairs Manager at the Department of Early Learning and Care. I'm coming from, I am in Northwest Portland, but I spend a lot of time in Salem. I'm here because as a parent of 3 small people, I also am a former child care provider, and now my job is to do legislative stuff, and that's one reason why we're here, and that's my jam. And so I'm really looking forward to working with you all. I'll pass it to Tony Rocco.
Good morning, everybody. Tony Rocco with the Building Codes Division. I'm coming to you from Salem. I've been the Structural Program Chief of the Building Codes Division for the past 6 years. I've been with the Division 13. Been in the construction industry in Oregon for over 25. Joining the group just to help on the technical side, help navigate the promulgation process, answer any questions about either the national model codes that we use here in Oregon or our Oregon specialty codes. Thanks for having me. I'll turn it over to Mr. Hawkins.
Thanks, Tony. Good morning, everyone. Chad Hawkins. I serve as the Assistant Chief Deputy State Fire Marshal, overseeing the Fire and Life Safety Division, which adopts the Oregon Fire Code and works really closely with the Building Codes Division as we do inspections of these child care facilities across the state with our Deputy State Fire Marshal staff. Been with the state for about 10 years, based here out of Salem, but I travel Oregon quite a bit, especially during fire season. Outside of that, one of the things I'm really here to be a part of, after being notified by our BCD partners, is just making sure that fire and life safety, especially with the most vulnerable populations in Oregon, this being one of them, are taken care of. When we talk about fire code and building code, those codes are essentially grounded and founded in data, science, and unfortunately life loss. So my one mission in life is always to protect our most vulnerable populations, and how we can make those codes effective and efficient in application, but also understanding there is an issue that needs to be addressed across the state with the availability of these care centers. So thank you, and I will turn it over to Patrick Wingard.
Patrick, are you able to unmute?
I think he may have frozen.
I think
and
that's
dropped
true.
off.
I'm always afraid that I'm the one who has frozen when that situation happens. So I'm going to call on Jennifer to keep it rolling, and we'll see if we get him back.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Hook, and I work for Childcare Resource and Referral, and we cover Umatilla, Union, and Morrow County over here in Eastern Oregon. And I am the manager for the 3 counties. And I was very interested in participating in this to see how it works with the zoning and how we can help make it easier for providers to understand the language behind the rules and regulations. It's really difficult. We have one city where one block over, you don't have to have the fire marshal come in, and you just literally across the street, you have to have the fire marshal. Here you don't. So the rules are sometimes confusing. And so I just want to make it as easy as possible, and I'm interested in the whole process.
All right, Chanel, you're up.
Hi, I am Chanel Horn. I'm from the city of Portland. And Bureau of Development Services, and I'm a plans examiner. I am like a childcare specialist in our life safety work group. So I often work with providers and, hear about the barriers of opening, expanding childcare businesses and the difficulties of the permitting processes. So I'm excited about this work and just here to offer my building code knowledge and work with help create improvements. Chuck.
Good morning, everyone. Chuck Arnold, City of Redmond, coming to you from snowy Redmond today. Really so glad to be here. I am the Economic Development Urban Renewal Manager for the city, and very much like to hear about and see the tie between our providers, our community, and our government about how we make those connections better and relate to more successful economic development. We've been doing this on a micro scale in the city of Redmond. We have a Redmond Child Care Task Force that involves providers as well as the state. Carol comes to those meetings occasionally from DELC, and we have a lot of good dialogue going about trying to attack these same exact issues on our local level. So I'm very interested to hear from the providers. I'm very grateful that the providers are taking time to come here today and to be involved in this effort. So I look forward to participating and helping where I can. Thank you. And off to Brad. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Brad Mandel. I'm assistant building official in Bend. I've been here about 20 years. I'm also an instructor at Chemeketa Community College in the building inspection technology program. I got into this mostly Michelle Patrick is a planner here that the two of us have been kind of become the specialists here in Bend, that when people have issues, they go to us to try and get their project off the ground and get a good daycare facility going. So we've also done a few presentations at Central Oregon Community College they have an early action program there I think it's called Early Action to get childcare going and train them on all the rules and everything too. So I've seen a lot of projects fall through because of it's a pretty complicated issue, the building code for childcare. So I'd be happy to help. And I think Patrick's the last one.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Patrick Wingard. I'm a regional representative with the Department of Land Conservation Development. I'm sitting in my Springfield office. I cover the Southern Willamette Valley region. My interests are in scaling and designing childcare centers for easy and intuitive integration into cottage clusters and other middle housing and high density and mixed use developments. I also am very interested in House Bill 3109, the implementation at the local level, in particular, the part about local governments being prohibited from imposing additional land use regulations, special fees, or conditions on the establishment or maintenance of early child care education facilities. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, folks. I appreciate you each kind of signing on and talking about why you're here, what your interest is. Many of us are parents, and so we might have some high emotions as well as intellectual and professional expertise to add to the conversation. And I just want to offer that sort of all the parts of you are welcome in this conversation. And we're going to go through some group agreements in a little bit, but I really wanted to emphasize that your participation and involvement is critical to the success of this project. So I'm glad that we spent the time we have this morning to at least starting to put names, spaces, roles, and the vast array of sort of geographies as well as professional experience that we're bringing to the table, but kind of underpinned by a common desire to make sure our kids in this state have safe, accessible places to thrive so that we, their parents and community members can do the same. And so, Leanne, if you could bring up the PowerPoint slide deck, we'll start with a brief overview of the agenda, and then we're going to roll right through it. We've made it through the box one, introductions. In a minute, we're gonna go into a discussion of what I would call the draft group agreements. We're gonna be together a few times over this next period of time. And so we've offered a few group agreements, but we want you to think them through. And if there are ones that don't resonate or you have others to offer, please, we want this to be a conversation so that we're all in agreement about what the group agreements are. After we have that little discussion, we'll go into some of the meat of our conversation today with a project overview, talking through context, the House bill, your role, schedule. We really want to spend a little bit of time talking about equity because it's central to the success of this project. And then talks a little bit about the background memos that you received. And then we're going to stop talking at you and give you a chance to break out into 3 small breakout rooms where you'll have about 25 minutes to provide some initial feedback. This round might be a little presentation heavy. We're hoping that over time the work group meetings are more dialogue based. So we would love to have your feedback on that, about the right kind of mix of information that we're providing to you to stimulate conversation, and then also making sure that you all have plenty of time to provide your expertise. And then we'll close today with some next steps. Okay. So the draft group agreements, really, these are all offered to help us work together effectively. And so we start with something that became pretty obvious through the introductions, that together we know a lot. And right, we also have something to learn from other folks. One of the challenges I think we find, and we heard this in the introductions, is that I might know a whole lot about one thing, but maybe I don't know a lot about 4 other pieces of the pipeline or situations that arise in beginning or operating a childcare facility. And so how can we both say what we know and also learn from each other? And that builds on to the second one, which is the why am I talking, or why aren't I talking? And so those of us who are offers of our opinion at any opportunity, maybe we need to make sure we do speak up, but also provide some opportunity for others who are more reticent to come forward to speak. And so let's try and monitor ourselves. Am I not speaking up and I have something to say? If so, maybe I raise my hand, put it in the chat, or just come off mute to offer that. And if you find that you're taking up a lot of space talking, maybe you hold the next one to allow some room for another person to offer their expertise. We want everyone to be curious. There's a lot of hurdles and barriers, right? We know that. That's why we're all here. And that can become a little bit, we can be, what do I want to say? Held back by those barriers. And what we're trying to do is like, how can we expand our vision and be curious about what the possibilities might be? There still might be more reasons why certain options can't work, but let's be open to ideating and being curious about what might be possible. And then, right, we're seeking commonality. And so it is good and robust to disagree, right? Because that's how we figure out all the pieces of the puzzle, is by saying, oh, but wait, in my experience, this happens. In my experience, that happens. In Portland, it's like this. In rural Oregon, it's like this, right? We want to have the contour and context and nuance of the experience so that we can ensure that we're making recommendations that fit across the state. And we might need to have some interventions that are specifically geared at certain folks that aren't necessarily applicable to others. And so let's try to approach the conversation where disagreement is not a problem, but maybe an opportunity. And also remember that we're all here for the same purpose. Practice active listening. I think that one speaks for itself. Don't make assumptions. That's a difficult one, but also truly important. Asking clarifying questions will help us clarify our understanding. We might think we know what someone is saying, but let's actually ask. And then finally, practice holding multiple truths. Because we are coming from different experiences with different understandings, it is possible both experiences may be true, and it often likely is. And so let's just let go of binary thinking that one way is the right way and figure out if we can dive into the nuance and contours of these issues so that, again, we can make effective recommendations to the legislature. I'm going to pause here for a minute for discussion, for questions, and also to see if anybody has additional or different group agreements that you might want to offer for the well-being of the team. Any concerns? Okay. Seeing or hearing none, I think we can move on to the next slide. And we're gonna breeze over this one. I think you all know the context of childcare probably better than I do. And I just want to offer a couple points. One, that this is a large problem. When 60% of Oregon residents live in a childcare desert, that's difficult. And we know that some populations and in some places that's even more difficult. And also, the state and the federal government, they have intervened in the past to help provide better daycare. Now, this was in World War II and contexts have changed, but I think this goes to the fact that there are possibilities before us. And one of the reasons, and it's good that the legislature is thinking about it from many different lenses, not just the land use zoning and building code barriers that we're here to address, but DELC also looking at other things that can be done. And in local jurisdictions and counties across the state, you all have already been thinking about this. So a multi-pronged approach of both public and private intervention to help make this come together seems to be the approach that will work the best. I also want to offer that it's not just availability and proximity to a childcare slot that is important to bear in mind, but the cost of that slot. And so how do the recommendations that we make help with that cost piece? Is it going to take 18 months to get through versus 12 months? Because we know that time is money. Are the improvements that folks have to make so expensive that the cost that they have to then charge to families goes up? These are the things that we should be bearing in mind as we contemplate what recommendations we offer going forward. Okay, I'll hand it over to you, Leanne.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly run through the scope of work that's outlined in the bill. At its core, the bill directs our friends at DLCD to convene this work group to examine how zoning and land use, building codes, and permitting and procedures affect the development of new early childcare facilities or the renovation or expansion of them. I know a lot of you in this meeting probably have deep familiarity with a lot of these components, but just in case, zoning regulations pertain to the local requirements a city or a county establishes that pertain to how a specific site can be used, and they dictate particular building characteristics as well. So how much square footage your building can be, how tall, how many parking spots you need to provide, any landscaping or trees you might need to include as well. Among many other things. And then building codes are the regulations that specify the standards for the construction of buildings related to safety, accessibility, health, and energy efficiency. So things like structural requirements, fire protection, electrical and plumbing systems, and ADA standards. And then permitting and procedures are the steps related to the development process. So how you're engaging with the different agencies you need to get approvals from in order to move forward with your project. And these regulations exist at both the state, county, and city level. So there's a lot of layers and we'll be navigating all of them. We'll also be looking at how these regulations intersect with the childcare licensing requirements as well. So we'll be working with you all, DLCD and DELC staff, and many others over the span of the project to gather, understand, and summarize the major barriers these types of regulations can create for providers looking to start new in-home childcare or childcare centers or expanding existing ones. But we'll also look at how these regulations might make things more challenging for other agencies and local governments as well. We'll be looking at ways communities might already be working on tackling some of these barriers that might be here in Oregon as well as other states, and seeing what kind of best practices are out there on this topic that we can learn from and develop recommendations related to. And finally, we'll be looking to understand how these types of barriers might be disproportionately affecting providers based on a range of factors such as race, income, and geography, looking at those rural areas as well. And finally, the report will include a summary of all of the research and community engagement findings, along with recommendations for not only reducing the barriers, but also finding ways that could directly or indirectly support the overall expansion of childcare facilities across Oregon, and then recommendations for how to create more equitable access for those who are disproportionately affected by these barriers and who might be wanting to start a business in childcare. And so here's our overall project schedule. Our deliverables are really shaped around these work group meetings. So expect new information presented, and like Cadence mentioned, we're really seeking the right balance of talking to you and engaging in discussion. But I think each meeting is going to be pretty different in terms of what we're discussing. But there will be a deliverable for you all to review prior to each meeting. So this, we're here at this first work group meeting. You had the background memo that's just sort of, laying out the lay of the land, so to speak. And then our second meeting is going to be sort of we're going to be doing a lot of community engagement between this meeting and the next one. So we'll be preparing a lot of our findings from that effort and discussing some of the barriers research that we've been developing too over that same period of time. And then meeting number 3 will be reviewing some of our draft recommendations. And then meeting number 4 will be working on finalizing those recommendations as a group. And then that'll kind of bring us into our preparation of the final report in October. And then it's due to the legislature at the end of the year, but I think we're aiming for November to give ourselves a little bit of buffer. And then I will turn it back over to Cadence.
Thanks, Leanne. Okay, so Echo Northwest will be writing the draft report, and this report is really intended to be from you all. And so, to ensure that that is actually a true statement, we really are going to need your participation, thoughtfulness, and feedback. So it would be really helpful if you could read the material prior to our meetings. We would love it if you are able to attend all of the work group meetings. And if you're not, we're happy to talk with you between meetings to help bring you back up to speed. And really providing input and feedback on the project during our meetings is critical to the success. We want to make sure that the work product that you'll be reviewing really reflects your knowledge, expertise, and desires. And so that's our whole goal with these meetings and the time that happens between those meetings, so that when the legislature receives the report at the end of the year, that we can say with confidence that it reflects you all. Okay, next slide. So the House bill itself requires us to recommend solutions really thinking about how different populations are impacted differently, including race, ethnicity, language, and geographic location. It is also part of DLCD and Echo Northwest and Scott Edward Architecture's way of being. And so we are using double equity frameworks throughout the project. And I really hope that we as a work group, not only just by your composition, but also by our participation and our conversation, really reflect that. And so it will impact everything from community engagement to the recommendations that we consider, and to really like purposefully tease out what are the differences. What's the difference from an early learning care center that's a facility versus a home-based provider's experience? How do those barriers show up differently? How does it show up differently in Lakeview as opposed to Coos Bay, as opposed to Salem? What are the impacts for folks who don't speak English as their primary language? What are the experiences of Black providers, et cetera? So we want to make sure that we're holding multiple groups in mind as we're considering both barriers and recommendations. And for those of you who are representing voices who are not necessarily often heard at the table, please, we want to hear from you. And if there are ways in which we can make it easier for you to participate, you can email us or call us, same with the DLCD team. We really want to make sure that this environment is as welcoming and effective as possible for you. Okay, next slide, please.
All right, so I'm going to do a really quick overview of some of the key pieces from the background memo, recognizing that this is a really broad overview, and we're really looking forward to diving into some more of the nuance and hearing about all of your experiences and perspectives with this information. Also recognizing that clearly all of you, or at least some of you, are very familiar with a lot of this information already, but also we know that this is a lot of dense technical information, so we're happy to sit down and answer any questions that you might have throughout the course of this project. So per the Department of Early Learning and Care, or DELC, there are really two main buckets of childcare providers. So we have licensed childcare providers and license exempt providers. License exempt providers are more like after school programs or church programs or smaller childcare providers, like 3 children or less. And so these types of providers generally engage less in the development process, and so might not fully fall under the scope of this project, but recognizing some of the nuance there. Then for licensed childcare providers, we are really interested in understanding both how family childcare homes, which are in residential structures, and childcare centers, which are generally in commercial structures, how those two types of providers interact with this development system and what the different impacts are on each of those provider types. Childcare homes tend to be a little bit smaller. So as many of you mentioned, registered family childcare is up to 10 children, and certified family childcare is a little bit bigger, up to 16 children. Childcare centers are generally a bit larger, but the exact capacity is determined by the amount of floor space and number of staff that that center has. Next slide, Leanne. All right, and the other key thing that we really want to touch on is just a really quick overview of this regulatory framework. So understanding that licensing is not necessarily entirely in the scope of this project, but that's a really important part of this process, recognizing that that is held by the Department of Early Learning and Care. But then for zoning, so as I believe Patrick mentioned, there was a big piece of state legislation recently, HB 3109, that requires local governments to allow childcare facilities in a broad range of zones, residential, commercial, and industrial, depending on whether or not they're home-based or center-based. And it also limits the special restrictions or fees that local governments can set. However, within that framework, local governments do have a lot of latitude to set their own land use policies, what zone is where, what are the building standards within each zone. And also, while they cannot establish more stringent rules for childcare facilities, they can establish broadly stringent rules for development in general, in which childcare could fall underneath. Second, for building codes, So these are generally determined at the state level through the building code division. Local jurisdictions can add additional code requirements to address location-specific issues. So, for example, Portland has additional seismic requirements to account for some of the earthquake risk in the older buildings in the city. So there is some back and forth between state and local governments there. And as well, DELC has additional facility requirements for childcare facilities for fire safety, sanitation, and lead testing in the water. And the last thing we're looking at is permits and procedures. The state does have some guardrails for review timelines, but local jurisdictions have a lot of power to establish permitting requirements and timelines within those guidelines. So they require additional neighborhood meetings or plan reviews or waiting periods, those types of things. So a lot of that is determined at the local level. So that is a very quick overview of this framework. There's a lot more information in the background memo, but again, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
This is Dana from the Children's Institute, and I would just ask, we're very familiar with House Bill 3109, but I think the big question that we hear from childcare providers across the state is it being implemented? And is there any kind of enforcement? Because I think we understand what the state law is, the intention of the state law is, but then the experiences that we hear from folks make us think maybe communities don't fully understand or implement, or maybe we're missing something. But wonder if there's any sense of the implementation of that law.
Thanks, Dana. Do any of our city or state friends want to respond to that question?
I can say a couple things. So I know that a lot of cities may not have changed their development codes to actually list out childcare centers as a permitted use, in their commercial zones as required by the bill. But that doesn't mean, they can still comply with the bill by applying the state law directly. So if, a childcare provider came to the city to request approval, to site a childcare facility in, in a commercial zone or a mixed use zone, for example, and the city's code says it's a conditional use permit, the city would just be in a position to say, well, you don't have to get a conditional use permit and you're considered a permitted use. And so we're going to treat you as such. I do think Dana is right that maybe some jurisdictions aren't aware of the law. And so, getting the word out is extremely important to providers, so they can advocate for themselves, and then also to the cities and the staff there.
Thanks, Kelly. Angie, did you want to add anything?
I think Kelly covered it, but I was just going to add that I've had several jurisdictions ask me recently in my region how that rule applies to them and how they are able to apply it directly by statute instead of their local code. So Kelly covered it, but I think it's fair to say that there are jurisdictions out there that are still not fully aware of how this is to be implemented consistent with the revisions to state law, and they're still working on refining their code to address it. But I think this conversation presents an opportunity for us to further message that information as we progress.
Yeah. And I think we've got a lot of note takers today, but this is the kind of information that we want to put in at least the parking lot, right? So there may be some things that aren't directly applicable to the charge of this group, but it's still important data. And so we don't want to lose that or have the blinders on that say, oh, this is not applicable, therefore we're going to not do anything with it. I think we've got enough state and local government jurisdictions represented here that we can make sure that it's written down somewhere and that it goes to the right folks who might be able to make a difference in that regard. Yes, Annalise.
I just want to say from the union's perspective that anytime a family childcare provider reaches out and talks to us about this issue, I have only had one city in 8 years really not, and granted, that was before the bill, right? Before the law changed, that was unreasonable, or what I would call unreasonable, right? That they didn't want to work with the provider. They just shut down any discussion, part of why we got that bill put through, I think. But I just want to say that anytime that I have personally worked with a childcare provider over the years to get something done, we have found that counties, cities, everybody is really good to work with.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay. Sorry, I'm just wanting to make sure I can get into the chat. Miriam's saying, I want to generally acknowledge that the term site, land use for some in this meeting is very different than how others use the term site, but that they sound the same. Yeah. Okay. Miriam, do you want to add more to that? Or just note it for the group?
Just noting it for the group that, especially for licensing and childcare providers, that the terminology that verbally sounds the same has very different contexts. And so I know if we're not reading the word on the screen, that there could be misinterpretation. So I just wanted to say that out loud. Thank you.
Thank you for offering. And this is part of the all the minds might be coming from with different orientations, also different language, right? So from a provider perspective, we might be using words that seem normal and make sense to us and are clear, and to a regulator might have a lot of different meanings, and vice versa. And so the asking and providing clarification is going to be a good way so that we don't end up being ships in the night thinking we're talking about the same thing, but in actual fact, we're talking about entirely different things. Does anybody else have a question or comment before we move on? This is exactly why we are here. Okay. Hearing none. Now it's time for small group. We're going to go into breakout session. In the small group, the first order of business will be to pick somebody from your group who is going to report out to the large group when we return. We have DLCD staff who will be taking notes on the group's behalf, but they are not the ones who will be reporting out. You'll have about 25 minutes in the small group to discuss a series of questions. And actually, Leanne, can you put that back up for a moment so folks can see what the questions are? But basically, it's what are your initial reactions to the background memos or this meeting so far? Importantly, what does the final report need to include for it to be successful in your mind? What kinds of places should have more childcare nearby? I know we had somebody talking about sort of clusters and middle housing and multifamily housing. Like where would we want to have more childcare facilities located? And then some prompts. If you could finish this sentence, potential childcare providers can't open for business because, right? And in this one, you can speak from your personal experience or your experience helping others. Or the hardest part about getting permits was, I could have a few stories about that one. And then finally, during the last couple of months, what should we be next couple of months, sorry, what should we be asking providers? And what should we be asking local government staff? So some of those key questions in our community engagement phase, we'd love to hear your answers to. And about 5 minutes before the group is going to wrap up and you're going to come back, probably a good opportunity to identify some key themes that you want the person reporting out to make sure they hit. And then we'll come back to large group. And so before we send you off, a note, you're going to get a little prompt on your screen asking you to join a room. Please do that. But before we go, are there any questions or thoughts? Okay. Then I think we are ready to be sent.
Hey, Ingrid or Angela, our breakout rooms ended a little too soon. We're being kicked out in about 30 seconds. I've just messaged the host, Angela, to put us back in our rooms. Apologies. We did a quick test run this morning that was 1 minute, and that time must have still been in the settings.
Best laid plans.
Yeah, it's probably my fault for asking for the 1 minute test run.
Oh, looks like we're going back. Here we go, friends.
Thank you.
Brad, did you get kicked out? Do I need to send you back? You're on mute.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I only see Ingrid and Angela Williamson on my screen now.
Yeah. Which room were you in? Do you remember?
3? Oh, it does say Leanne is inviting me to join room 3. Just click join on that.
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's hard to get in a roll in 2-minute bites, but we're gonna get there, friends. Let's try it.
Goodness. I have a question. Since nobody else is using the main room, or are we all being pushed back?
All right, folks. When we started planning this agenda, I was like, 25 minutes, that's going to be a long time. I hope people have things they really want to talk about. And I feel like it went, I mean, we had some hiccups, but I even with the hiccups, I think that went by pretty quickly, and know that at least in our group, we could have talked for a lot longer about a whole host of things. So uh, rest assured, not the only time we're going to ask similar questions or give you an opportunity to provide more feedback. I think we're gathering really rich information and seeing where there's areas and themes of alignment, and also areas where there's a little bit of nuance, where some people lean more heavily into one aspect and some lean more heavily into another. And so we want to keep that going. So I hope that you each group picked somebody who was going to report out. And is there, maybe we'll just go in order. Does group one, first of all, do you know that you are group one? And can the person who's going to report out please do so?
Chuck, that's you.
I was just waiting to see if whether or not I was group one. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that delay. Again, Chuck Arnold, City of Redmond. Our group, fantastic discussion. Not enough time, as often as these things. Big acknowledgement to Angie for helping provide some notes to collaborate with my notes. Initial reactions to the background memo was there was some surprise from those that aren't in the sector deep into it as like providers about how the complexity of navigating the system is just very overwhelming for people. Not knowing who to talk to and when, the registered family care trying to become a certified family care, lots of disconnect in learning and executing the process, and the issue between centers and homes are very different. And I think that's general summary of that. Infant care is more expensive to provide. Other issues from the background memo is that the economics are generally very difficult. The final report, what do we need to call it success? Our group really felt that there need to be very concrete recommendations, some relationships to funding capacity to help implement changes, a push to have municipalities adopt codes that are more collaborated with the state law that's been changed. Some evidence-based recommendations need to be in there as well. And then I added the link between the Business Oregon Directive House Bill for Childcare Infrastructure Funding, House Bill 3005, and the outcomes of this 2727, and how they interact and make sure that we're setting them up for both success. Places where more childcare are needed. One great one that came up was really never thought about this, was we have so much construction and development going on in the state right now, and so many resources coming, and what are the needs of those construction workers, and how do we make sure that we are meeting those needs? And so integrating that into the construction field was something that was brought up. And then just wrapping up, childcare providers can't open because navigating the system is difficult. They don't feel that they have an advocate to help them walk through the process, and that HOAs and landlords can become this obstacle that, almost by design of themselves, without intention, make it difficult for providers to open. And then finally, the hardest part about getting permits is, we actually didn't. I kind of missed that one a little bit, so I apologize if we kind of jumped around, ran out of time, but I'm going to jump back to the last one. During the last couple of months, what should we be asking providers, and what should local governments staff be getting asked, is really helping end users determine who they should go to and for what at what time. And Chad, the fire marshal, brought up the idea of this: when is it the building code and when is the fire code, and when it takes what takes priority at which time in the dialogue. So that's it. Sorry for taking so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. We really appreciate your report out. Group 2.
All right, we were group 2, and Dawn will be sharing for us. Go ahead, Dawn.
Hi, I'm Dawn Crawford from Community Action Team, Columbia, Clatsop, and Tillamook counties. So we looked at the first 2 questions and talked about different ways that what we'd like to see and things that might be confusing. The first one, what we thought a goal in safety needs to be at the forefront so that child safety isn't diminished or that's the priority. So we want to have a threshold for that. A lot of what we said kind of mimics what Chuck said. So a lot of the same points came across very strong. Pretty much having like an incentive for providers to help get through that path of licensing, but also to help with expenses through permits and things like that. We also talked about the economics of childcare and what does that look like for the longevity of being successful in their business. We thought there should be a threshold or a goal for the amount of reduction of childcare desert as part of the project. I know that it was stated that it didn't need to be quantified, but that's something that we thought would be helpful for future funding and moving forward. Let's see, the other question about what we'd want to see at the end of the result also would be, well, I already said about the threshold. So accountability is an important piece, implementing considerations to include the accountability. Talked about how can we track and measure the success at some degree. Let's see, building code guidance for local governments to simplify the process. That it's a huge piece and it differs from local to county to state. So simplifying that, and we all agreed that that's part of why we're all here, is so that we could simplify that process to help support the advancements in childcare. And also having someone be there to support and help people go through that. And once it's simplified, the support could be given easier because it would be the same across the state. And then measuring the access by improving the public navigation of the process. So there was an example given about how they're looking at, you get onto a website and there's a ton of forms. How can we simplify that process to help people be successful in that? And then again, the accountability for safety at all local levels will be important.
Thank you,
Great.
Dawn. Group 2.
Thanks, Dawn.
Yeah. All right, Peter, you're up for group 3.
Yeah, thanks. So some of the themes that came up in our group, in no particular order, were a general request to reduce the bureaucratic red tape and fees associated with the permitting process, particularly at the early assistance level. So, just basic inquiries when folks are doing their due diligence. Oftentimes jurisdictions charge fees, and that's a hindrance. Perhaps streamlining that. So a lack of consistency in applying the building code requirements for different types of childcare settings. So, for example, church basement versus, home-based versus other types of buildings. So one provider noted, running several different types of facilities got different feedback in the same jurisdiction. So maybe streamlining that a bit and being more consistent. Another comment, it's often difficult to find sites that are zoned appropriately for childcare use. And I know that's a big theme among probably all the groups. Or also difficult to sometimes expand an existing program. And kind of a corollary to that comment, it's one of the key limiting factors particularly for smaller, let's say home-based childcare sites are the meeting the minimum outdoor play. And I've actually experienced that too in our practice. So I can attest to that. There was a nice design comment just about considering not only the children in these facilities, but designing really nice interior spaces for staff to promote, mental health and staff retention, because that's an easy way to kind of, improve the overall staffing shortage. Another comment was to consider allowing childcare centers in mixed-use developments, maybe creating a kind of center-based childcare overlay zone, which I thought was really interesting to consider. That's a little in the weeds on zoning, but we can probably come back to that in subsequent sessions. Another comment was to consider removing requirements to have for a potential purchaser or operator to have control over the site before you can initiate a land use application. Again, a little in the weeds on the process, but totally get that, and we'll talk more about that, I imagine. Cool idea. And then the final comment we had was to maybe consider allowing higher numbers of children in home-based childcare centers, provided the fire and life safety requirements are met. So that's it from us.
Thank you, Peter. So much more rich conversation, I'm sure, happened in all of the groups. Rest assured, our note takers have captured that. We can bring some of that up in particular moments as we move forward. Are there any other sort of last comments that folks should be looking at the chat, because there's a lot more conversation happening there, but is there anything that anyone wants to offer for the good of the full group that you thought was an important thing that came out of your small group conversation, or something you didn't think of in the small group that you want to share now?
I'll add something that I think that we alluded to in the earlier presentation, was that we have to think about equity and language. Our highest growing population in our region are people that are immigrants that don't speak English, people of color, and there's an additional barrier for them to navigate. I apologize, I'm finally getting a tree cut down that's been falling since the storm, and there's a lot of noise. I don't know if you can hear that. But that navigation is even more of a barrier for those folks than other people. So I just wanted to keep that in mind. There may be specific kinds of investment that needs to happen for those populations, and we're thinking about that as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Leslie, for bringing that up. Okay, anything else? Then I think we can move to the next part of our discussion, which is generally titled Next Steps, but there's a DLCD staff wanted to introduce some homework, I think.
Thank you, Cadence. I first want to thank you for this discussion so far. This has been so inspiring, and I've learned so much already. I'm just really excited for this work, and really excited to actually see you all in person and not just be looking at your names on paper for the, the anticipated meeting. So this is so great. Our internal team is interested in I've heard this echoed in some of the share outs about, and some of work group or breakout room one's discussion about really wanting to have some concrete, tangible things to focus on and prioritize and sort of report back out on. And one of the things we talked about internally was developing what we've been calling a bit of a policy matrix, where we identify, we list out the concerns or the barriers or the things that we want to sink our teeth into, and then we can articulate from there what exactly, what's relevant: policy, regulations, departments, what types of providers, how we might think about developing strategies. So we have this sort of matrix in mind, but what we need from you to start that is a list of potential barriers or concerns or things that we should start fleshing out. And so if you have some time in the next couple of weeks, I think I'm looking for my teammates' faces. I think March 1st was the deadline we had discussed earlier. If you could send us by email to any one of us your thoughts and sort of your punch list of things that you really think we should be spending some time exploring. Obviously, all other thoughts are welcome too, including strategies and things, but the priority really is to hit the barriers so we can start brainstorming on strategies, and all of the pieces and layers that we've been discussing that make it so complicated. We want to be able to unpack that in a visible way that we can start to pin down the details in. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that? Kelly or Melissa, do you want to add to that? Did I miss any sort of major elements of that theme?
Thanks, Angie.
Yeah.
We'll put our emails in the chat, and you should have them in you might have them in your email already, but we'll put them in the chat. And I think, what we heard today is a great starting list, and like we have probably a lot of things that we can start to add to the list of barriers based on what we heard. But if there are things that didn't come up today or things you want to elaborate on, I think that we'd love to hear it in the next 2 weeks. So thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So does anybody have questions or thoughts about that before we move on to more next steps? Okay. So we will be meeting again in May. So between now and then, behind the scenes, DLCD will be working on that policy matrix. And the consultant team will be doing some initial community engagement. And we'll be coming back to you to talk about our initial results in May, as well as some other discussion items. So be on the lookout for some deliverable information and calendaring. And then in the meantime, for you, in addition to sending some of those barriers to DLCD staff, please let us know if there are ways that we can support you. Are there ways you'd like this work group format to pivot a little bit? Are there different or additional things that we can do between meetings that would make it easier for you to participate? If you have any feedback on who you would like us to specifically reach out to, we would love to have any additional information that you all have on providers who or potential providers who didn't make it through the process, right? It's one thing for us to be able to locate those folks who are licensed and who are making it, but for those people who didn't make it, it's really hard for us to know who they are. So Annalise, I'm looking at you specifically, but I know there are other folks in the room who have worked with people who have tried to. Leslie, you too, please. And Dana, if you've got thoughts about folks who have tried, and some of your regulators, if you have folks you are currently helping who you don't think are going to make it, or who have current contacts with people who have tried and not successfully made it through, please let us know. I will also add, especially for folks who are in rural Oregon, Black, Latinx, immigrant, refugee populations, folks who you think that we have not heard from or will not easily reach absent your thoughts, please let us know. We absolutely want to make a concerted effort to try and reach people who are not already knocking on the door, right? We want to make sure that we're getting to people who don't feel like anyone would care if they did say. And we need your help for that. Okay. Any questions before we close for the day? Yeah.
I'm just going to plug our website into the chat because it's new. I don't know that any of you have had a chance to see it because it was just pushed out. It was just live last Friday. But in your outreach to other colleagues and contacts, if you want to share the website as a tool for them to sign up for what we call our Gov delivery notices, our outreach only goes to those that we know about, to Cadence's point. So, the more folks that we have interested to sign up through that portal, the bigger our reach will be and the more information we'll get back. So I'll plug that in really quick. And again, just to really appreciate the time and thought that's gone into this discussion today.
I just want to reiterate, we've got providers that have really good stories about this. Angie, Cadence, Kelly, everybody. So if DLCD wants us to get together a few people, we can get them I've got about 5 different languages plus English that I can put people together very quickly for. So if anybody wants to meet with those folks and hear their stories firsthand, that would be amazing if you guys want to capture that. So just reach out to me. I'm happy to put something together. We'll get some interpreters, make sure that all the languages are covered, and we can get that put together.
That's it. That's what we're looking for. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, people, let's let Friday begin. Thank you for your time and attention, and giving you 3 minutes back. Thank you so much.